Hey guys, in this video I wanted to share the most powerful PvP build I've ever created for the Wizard class. I actually reached Legend rank in the Battlegrounds last week with this build with a 77% win rate, and I pretty much exclusively played this build all the way from Silver 1 up until Legend, and because I didn't really want to stop there and I wanted to kind of get a better feel of the build and understand the build a lot more and the best way to play it, I actually ended up playing this build all the way up to rank 1 on my server. And you can see that my win rate has dropped to 68%, which is kind of to be expected because the matches are a lot more tough and people kind of know that they should look out for wizards and kind of hunt down wizards a lot more. But as you can see, the stats here are very impressive. I'm up to 3.7k, almost 3.8k. For Tower War, I actually have a rank 1 here as well with 67% win rate, so this build is extremely consistent. So I actually reached a rank 1 legend in the Tower War just within 1.5 days of it coming back, so it's just come back, and I'm really happy with these results. So overall, between Tower War and BGs, I've played about 400 matches with this build, so I have a lot of experience playing it, and hopefully I'll be able to kind of share that information and what I've learned with you guys. So I like to call this build Infinite Freeze because the idea behind it is to try to spam the Arcane Wind freeze as much as possible and basically CC everyone, and I think that this build probably has the highest amount of CC out of any build in the game currently, so it's incredibly powerful. But the downside of the build is that it's incredibly difficult to play and you will be incredibly squishy because obviously you are a wizard. So when creating this build, I took a lot of inspiration from my own build, which is the Infinite Power build, if you haven't guessed. And in that build, it's extremely difficult to play because you do have to spam a lot of buttons and you also kind of have to be aware of your positioning. And this build is kind of the same. So just as a disclaimer, if you don't like those kind of builds with the Terminus Facade slow time, which lets you spam all the skills, then I wouldn't recommend to play this build. So if you do decide to give this build a go, I'm sure you won't be disappointed. Let's go ahead and quickly start off with the skills. So for the skills, I'm using Slow Time, Frost Field, Arcane Wind, Disintegrate, and for the primary attack I'm using Magic Missile. You'll notice that I'm not using Teleport, which is literally what makes playing this build so challenging, because you don't have the safety net of Teleport and you have to rely on having excellent awareness of the map and also all the players around you. And positioning is extremely important for this build, not only to stay alive but also to maximize the amount of damage that you'll do. And I'm going to be talking about the damage rotation and also how you can move around with this build. So next, let's go over the legendary essence that I'm using. For the helmet, I'm using the Terminus Facade. I've already talked about how this works, but basically it allows you to kind of spam your non-channel skills when you use Slow Time, and each time you press one of your non-channel skills, it's going to reduce the cooldown of your other skills, which allows you to recharge them faster. And this is kind of the core of the build because you want to kind of maximize the amount of Arcane Winds that you do, which is going to allow you to freeze everyone. So next we're using Lisana's Sorrow, which is the chest essence for Frost Field, and this reads that Frost Field now grants you a creeping chill, causing your attacks to chill enemies and freeze them on critical hits, and Frost Field cooldown is reduced by 7.2%. So this is an excellent chest. It's one of the new essence which was added, and I definitely recommend if you're playing any kind of PvP build for Wizard to include this into your build, because it just allows you to do all of the CC that you want to do, and in combination with the older crystal for Arcane Wind. I have seen a few players using the chest for lightning over here, which does actually give more damage, but the problem is it doesn't give you the chill effect which is necessary to kind of activate the freeze effect of Arcane Wind, like I said. So moving on to the shoulders essence, I'm using the War Mage Mantle, which if you've seen my Infinite Power build, you'll be already familiar with. It basically allows your Disintegrate to become a projectile, which bounces between you and multiple enemies, dealing damage and shattering their armor. This is an extremely good essence because it does a lot of damage and also applies an armor break effect. So if you go to the skills menu here, you'll be able to see that if you go to Disintegrate here, it says that it shatters their armor and increases the damage they take by 6% for 2 seconds, and it stacks up to 3 times. So this is really good because it stacks up to 18%, and not only this, you have a maximum amount of charges of 3, and each time you use one of these charges, it's going to reduce the cooldown of all of your other skills, and most importantly, the Arcane Wind freeze. So next, let's move on to the Pants Essence, which is the Hasten Oblivion, and this one reads that Disintegrate's cooldown is reduced by 1.6 seconds when damaging enemies, up to a maximum of 4.8. In my opinion, this is a key essence for the build, and I would not replace this for anything else. Otherwise, you'd be playing a completely different build. This is just so good because basically if you hit stuff with your Disintegrate, it just makes your Arcane Wind completely spammable. And I've been in games where I'm able to cast about 3 Arcane Winds in a second, which is just insane. This Pants Essence is really what defines the playstyle of this build, and I'm going to be showcasing this in the gameplay. You'll see how important it is. Next, let's go over the main hand essences. So it's very simple here. I'm using Thistle Bloom. In my opinion, this is the best main hand for Arcane Wind. It reads that Arcane Wind now conjures a storm that grows over time, pulling in and damaging in nearby enemies. So when you cast this, it's just going to grow larger and larger. And in the BG, where you've got the 2 lanes in the second phase, which is the most important phase, this is really good because it basically covers the whole area. And then next for the Lost Seconds main hand, this is a pretty simple main hand. This just reads that slow time cooldown is reduced by 18.6%. So this is required to have as close slow time cooldown as possible. Remember that in BGs, all of your cooldowns in your stats gets reduced by the strife effect. So instead of the 11% cooldown that I have in my stats here, is going to be strifed down to 5%, which makes this piece necessary to have this extra cooldown along with the helmet essence. Finally, for the offhand essence, I'm using the Older Crystal, which is the Arcane Wind essence, which a lot of you will be familiar with. This is what gives the freeze effect, so it reads that Arcane Wind now also freezes chilled enemies for 2.4 seconds and cannot occur more often than once every 3 seconds or 5 seconds per player. This is a key essence for this build and I wouldn't recommend switching out. And then finally we've got the Rin Raw Amber, which is one of the latest essences we've recently got, and this simply reads that Arcane Wind cooldown is reduced by 18.6% and it gives another 10% cooldown from the Awakening. So the reason why I have this is because I want to get the maximum Arcane Wind cooldown. So if you didn't know, the maximum skill cooldown you can have per skill is 30%. So this alone will give me 28.6%. And if we look at the other Arcane Wind essence which I have, so this one here, it actually gives 10% Arcane Wind damage, so it's actually very good, but it doesn't give cooldown. And this one here does give the 10% cooldown here. So in actual fact, I've overcapped my cooldown for Arcane Wind. So there is an argument to be made that you could potentially switch this essence out for something else. After all, there are some really good essence for Arcane Wind. So if we take a look here, let's just take a quick look at the offhand essence here and look at Arcane Wind. So here we've got the Unrepentant Gale, which is going to give us an extra charge, and this one also gives 13.6 cooldown. This one is really good. And let's have a quick look at the other ones. So the other ones, we also have 30% cooldown reduction. I believe this gives another 10% cooldown. And then this one here, Blood of the Wind, Arcane Wind deals 38% more damage when igniting a firestorm. So this one is probably the best one in my opinion, but the problem is that the Awakening gives Arcane Wind damage rather than Arcane Wind cooldown, and in my opinion the most important thing is to have the constant 30% cooldown on Arcane Wind. This is what makes the build flow, and this is what's going to give you the maximum CC and the maximum damage. So in my opinion, having the Wind Raw Amber, at least for me, made the most sense. So next, let's talk about the set item choices. So for the set item choices, the only thing which I'd say is mandatory is 2 pieces of Vithus. So this gives 30% extra beneficial effect duration. If you don't have this, then your slow time is going to have too much of a cooldown, which is going to kind of ruin the whole playstyle of the build. You really want your slow time to have as close to 100% uptime as possible. I think I have only 1 second downtime of it, and it feels just about okay. So I would really recommend you guys to have this 2-piece Vithus. For the other 6 slots, it's kind of flexible. In my case, I went for 4 pieces of Grace of the Flagellant. This works really well because of the 4-piece bonus, which says that each time I damage an individual enemy 5 times, I deal extra damage to them. And this just works really well with the damage over time legendary gems, which I'm going to go over. But if you don't have legendary gems, I'd actually recommend you to probably go for 6 pieces of Banquet of Eyes, or maybe 4 pieces of Banquet of Eyes and 2 pieces of something else. So in my case, I've gone for 4 pieces of Grace and 2 pieces of Feasting Baron. So this is going to increase the duration of harmful effects, which just boosts my CC. And this works really well if you have high potency. So I'm going to go over my secondary stats, but in my case, I have 5k potency. So I've opted to go for the 2-piece Baron set. So just to recap, I'm using 2-piece Vithu, 2-piece Baron, and 4-piece Grace. And only use Grace if you have a lot of damage over time sources. And I'd only recommend you to use Barons if you have a high potency. Let's move on to talk about legendary gems. So unfortunately, I'm not a super high resonance player, so I can't comment on how this build plays for really high resonance, but I've tested it with both 4.5k resonance, and currently I'm only using around 2.3k resonance, and this is because I just want really optimal gems for my setup, and I prefer playing with optimal gems rather than suboptimal 5 stars. So I've got gems like Svensson, Howlers, and also Echoing Shade, but unfortunately they're not very useful for this build at all. You could make the argument that you should probably probably use auxiliary gems, but I just don't really like the rank 1 effects of auxiliary gems, and I prefer to use ranked up gems which are actually useful for my build. So this is the reason for low resonance, and I also wanted to prove that the build is viable for low resonance even in whale matches. So this is actually the resonance that I was playing with for most of the clips that you're going to see in this video. So talking about the gems that I'm using now, I'm using Pain Clasp. So this reads that it increases the damage to enemies suffering from continual damage effects, and because I'm applying a lot of continual damage effects, this pretty much has 100% uptime, and I definitely recommend to use Pain Clasp in your setup if you have it ranked up. Next, I'm using Everlasting Torment. This is a really good gem because it applies the dot effect, and dot gems are really useful for this build. Next, I'm using Bloodsoaked Jade. I'm not even going to bother talking about this. This is kind of a must-have for any build you're going to play. The flat-out damage it gives is just insane. So next, I'm using Bloody Reach, and this gives you damage while at range, and this is just an okay gem. I would probably switch out for Viper's Bite or Starfire Shard if I had either of those ranked up. Both of those would be better than this, but unfortunately, I had to make do with this one. So as a wizard, you will be at range a lot of the time, but admittedly, this build can actually get closer to enemies. So in that case, this gem isn't going to be all that useful, but for now, this is what I'm using. And then next, I've got the Seeping Bile, which is a really nice gem. It applies a continual damage poison effect. And then next, this is kind of a must-have gem, the Bottled Hope. So because we're using a buff skill, which is slow time, and also the Frost Field, you're always going to make use of the movement speed and the damage buff from this gem. So it's just a really good gem to have. Next, I'm using the Roiling Consequence. This is another must-have. So this is really good because it applies the burning effect, and it gives you potential to apply Firestorm, which is going to give you guaranteed critical hits. This is just a really good gem to have. When I tried taking it out, I just didn't perform that well, so definitely include this gem in the build. And as a side note, I've already mentioned the Starfire Shard, which can also give you another potential source of the burning effect if you have that ranked up, but unfortunately I do not, so I'm not using it. And then finally, I'm using the new gem here, which is the Morn Skull. This is really good because it gives you really high potential of damage, and especially when the barb pulls you into the enemies, you're going to kind of surprise them with the extra damage that you do. This is kind of sleeper OP in my opinion. I didn't expect it to be that good, and I just decided I'd rank it up for a laugh, but honestly, when I actually used it in practice, it actually works incredibly well in the Battlegrounds. So in my opinion, besides the Bloody Reach, all the gems that I have are very well optimized, so that's why the build works so well. But I'm going to go over the notable gems which could be good for your setup if you do have these, and feel free to use them in the setup. It's going to work very well. Entropic Well is the first one, 1-star gem, and this is really good because it increases your skill damage and also your skill attack speed damage. Most of the damage here is coming from skills rather than primary attacks, so this is why this gem is really good. Moving on quickly, we've got Misery Elixir. This is good because it increases duration of harmful effects. If you have high potency, use this. If you don't have high potency, I would probably skip it. I'm going to skip through a couple of these. They're not really that good. Next, we have Berserker's Eye. This one is a really good one. That's probably it for the 1-star gems. I'm already using Everlasting Torment, so I'm not going to talk too much about that one. So for the 2-star gems, Cold Confidant. This is a really good gem in PvP, and it has a nice AoE effect. Unfortunately, I don't have this ranked up, otherwise I would probably be using it in place of the Bloody Reach. That's another potential gem to use. Next, we have Igneous Scorn. This could also be a potential gem to use if you do have it ranked up. Next, we have the Viper's Bite. This is honestly a very nice gem to have because of the dot effects, especially if you're using 4-piece Grace. I wouldn't recommend to skip out on this one. Mother's Lament could also be potentially used because of the increased critical hit chance. It's also a nice gem to have. I'm using Pain Class, we already talked about that. I think that's honestly it for the 2-stars. That's what I'd probably be using. Next, for the 5-stars, let's quickly go over them. So Seeping Bow is good. Bloodsoaked Jade, I would not skip this one. I would not skip Bottled Hope, and I would not skip Roiling Consequence. If you have a ranked up Starfire Shard, then I also wouldn't skip this one. So these are the best 4 gems in my opinion for the 5-stars. Frozen Heart and also Spiteful Blood could be decent defensive options, and these gems also give pretty nice bonuses when you do rank them up. And then finally, for these last couple of gems, Void Spark, Maw of the Deep, Hilt of the Many Realms, Storm Vault, and Wolf Heart. Any of these gems would work absolutely fine for this, and I wouldn't feel too bad about using them. If you do have them ranked up, then I would just say go for them. So other than that, I think I've gone through all of the useful gems. If I haven't mentioned a gem here that you're using, then it probably isn't the best for this build. I want to talk about the secondary stats because this is really important. So for this build, the most important secondary stats in my opinion are armor penetration and also potency. So obviously armor is really important so you're not super squishy, so I do recommend having at least a little bit of armor. In my case, case, I only have one armor gem here, which is a rank 8, and everything else is a armor penetration gem, so I have gone a bit overboard with the armor penetration, but at the end of the day, I like to play the build in this style, which is in the style of a glass cannon, so this is why I've gone for the really high armor penetration. And then for the potency, I've got 5k potency, and for the resistance, it's not so important for this specific build. Honestly, I would probably skip this a bit just to increase both your armor pen and your potency. I think that this is going to give you the best results in the Battlegrounds. So the other thing to note is that, as you can see here, I've gone for Fortitude and Willpower on most of my gear pieces here. You can see Fortitude, Willpower, Fortitude, Willpower, Fortitude, Willpower, and I've got this pretty much everywhere. And then the same for the set items. I've got Fortitude, Willpower on pretty much every single piece. You can see that for this specific piece here where I've got Fortitude and Willpower, if we click on the Fortitude, I've got 948, and this will increase my armor by 94 and my armor penetration by 94. So basically, every 10 points of Fortitude is going to give you 1 point towards armor and armor penetration, and likewise, every 10 points of Willpower is going to increase your potency by 1 and your resistance by 1. So this is the reason why I've gone for these rather than the Intelligence main stat and also the Vitality main stat. For the Paragon tree, I opted to go for the Gladiator tree. In my opinion, this is the best tree for the Wizard in the current meta because it just has the cheat death. Without this, you're going to be dying way too much, and I definitely recommend having this node. This node is probably one of the most important ones. And then Grizzled Veteran and also to the Victor. These two are incredibly important. Don't switch these two out. And then for the last two nodes, I'm using the extra attack speed when I defeat a player and extra critical hit chance when I defeat a player. Both of those could be replaced. Personally, this one is okay to be replaced in my opinion. You could go for either the Battle Morale here, which gives you increased damage when one of your party members kills an enemy, or you could go for the Hold Formation, which gives you reduced damage when you're nearby a party member. But for now, this is my setup. This is what I like to use. For the legendary skill, what I decided to go for is Benefactor, which says that when you use a buff skill, you gain a shield, and it also gives a shield to nearby allies. In my opinion, this is the best one to use for PvP. I've done multiple tests with both Lightning Rod and Roaring Strike, and they're just not that good. In my opinion, Benefactor is just the one which consistently gives the best effect. For the Warband room, I'm using the room which gives the increased block chance. This one's probably the best one for PvP, for pretty much any build, and also with the Shepherd's Burden Remnant, this one's kind of a must-have to give you increased size and also increased life. Let's quickly go over the Reforges and curse properties that I'm using. So for the Reforges, I haven't changed this from my previous videos, so I'm still using primary attack damage, beneficial effect, and then 3 pieces of the Vengeance set. Feel free to copy this, or you could switch it out if you have Barrier set or the Jolt set. Those would work extremely well here. So for the Vengeance bonus, which gives extra damage when you use your primary attack, so unlike a few other Wizard builds, I do try to weave in my primary attack here and there, which is Magic Missile, so this effect isn't completely lost, and these Reforges work just fine for now, in my opinion. As far as the curse properties go, I also didn't really bother so much with this, so I'm using 5 pieces of Lash and 2 pieces of Atrophied. This works decently well. Probably the most optimal setup would probably be something like 6 pieces Atrophied, 2 pieces Lashed, or 6 pieces Tested and 2 pieces Lashed. You could just go for whatever you have rolled out of all of those options. For the familiar, I'd really recommend you guys to use a pet that has Savior. Unfortunately, this is the best one that I have. It's pretty bad. It would be much better if I had a Dust Prowler here, but it is what it is. You really want to go for this Savior because especially for Wizard, you're going to be extremely squishy, and each one of those cheat deaths really helps you to survive a lot more. So this is the reason why I've gone for this pet here. If you do have also the Ignition skill, that skill is also really good just to allow you to have more uptime of the Firestorm, because after all you are casting a ton of Arcane Winds, which is a wind skill, so if you do have that extra fire damage source, it's going to really boost your damage a lot more. So I'll quickly also mention Eternal Gear properties, because I'm sure you guys are going to ask me about this. So for the Eternal Gear properties, there's not really that many which actually make use in this build, so they're not really required. The Disintegrate one here doesn't work with the War Mage Mantle, so it doesn't really help. The only one which could potentially be useful is the Arcane Wind range increase by 8%. So if you have 4 pieces of that, you could potentially increase the range of your Arcane Wind by 32%. Unfortunately, I don't have any of these pieces to show you guys, but I have seen a couple of friends run this, and what it does is it increases the range of the circle, so it covers more of an area. area, so it actually does sound really good. I'm not too sure if that effect gets strifed or not in BGs, but if it doesn't, then there's even higher potential for this build to be even more crazy. I want to go over the mechanics of this build because I think it's really important to know the mechanics before you jump into the Battlegrounds. So first of all, let's talk about how to move around with this build. So obviously if I'm moving around like this at base speed, it's pretty slow. The way you move around is you press your slow time, and obviously you don't want to be using your arcane wind because this kind of wastes your charges, and this is going to be your CC and stun. But it actually isn't so bad to use your frost field and also your disintegrate. So if we look at the movement rotation that I like to do, obviously you always want to press slow time, and then you press frost field, and then you press your disintegrate. This is going to lower the cooldown of your frost field. You can press disintegrate once again, and then press frost field, and then press disintegrate, and basically you want to rotate between frost field and disintegrate. So once again, it's slow time, frost field, disintegrate once or twice depending on how you like it, and then frost field once again. And then by that time your slow time should be back up for you to use again, and that's how you move around. So anytime you die and you need to get back into combat, this is the rotation that you want to follow, and basically this is what's going to guarantee that you have the maximum amount of movement speed if you want to move towards the next objective. So that's really important to have. So now that we've gone over the movement, I want to go over the damage rotation. So for PvE, it's not really the same as PvP because of the striped cooldown. So the cooldowns are going to be slightly off here, but I'm going to try my best to show you guys. So you want to always be pressing slow time and frost field pretty much all the time, even when you're in or out of combat, it doesn't matter. So for frost field, you're going to have 100% uptime. For slow time, if you're using a similar setup to mine, you're going to have roughly 1 second downtime. So that's fine, but basically you want to be pressing these all of the time because it's going to guarantee you to do the maximum amount of damage and also be able to spam all of your skills. So it's really crucial for you to keep pressing these two skills. So the other thing is when to press Arcane Wind. So there's two cases where you want to press Arcane Wind. First of all, you can press it just as a warning shot from really far away, and this is just to block enemies. So you can just press your slow time, your frost field, and just warning shot, and then keep moving around, and then get ready to kind of strike at your opponent. So as far as the striking goes, you want to go like this, and then obviously spam your Arcane Wind and also your disintegrate. What's really important is that you basically want to aim your cursor or your direction of your character towards something just to hit it with disintegrate. And what this does is it's going to bounce your disintegrate between you and the target, and also any other targets behind the target, which is just insane. The pants essence, which I've already talked about, which gives you cooldown on your disintegrate. This is going to make your disintegrate refresh all the time, and the more casts of disintegrate you do, the more casts of arcane wind you do. And this is kind of the key of this build, is to basically be able to infinitely cast arcane wind with the use of disintegrate. And this is basically going to stun CC and also do a huge amount of damage to your enemies. The only way they can get out of it is through kind of CC breaks, like for Tempest or Monk, which can be a problem, but for things like Barb or Crusader, you're absolutely going to be demolishing them. They won't even be able to touch you using a build like this. And the good thing is that once you have a Barb in target, you can basically use them as a pinata. Even if they kind of proc their Undying Rage, you can keep hitting them with the Disintegrate, kind of as a pinball effect. And what this does is it's going to, like I said, refresh your Arcane Wind and also strike enemies behind them, which is just really good. You're basically using the Barb as a weapon in this build. So that's it as far as the mechanics go. I'm going to go over the gameplay now and you'll be able to see what I'm talking about. So I'm going to show a few games now just so you guys can see the build in action. So here we go. For my first game, I'm playing as a defender, and you can see that I'm using my movement rotation to get close to the idol here. So I actually don't recommend you guys to always do this, because if you're playing in a higher resonance lobby, you are going to get ran over and you will die really quick. So it's actually better to stay closer to the choke point so you can do a real impact in the game. But in this case, I actually checked the resonance of all the players, so I kind of know that most of the players in this lobby are between 3 and 4k resonance, and I'm playing with 2k resonance, so I did feel a little bit more confident that I am able to kind of be a bit more aggressive with my wizards. So this is what I'm trying to do here. But as you can see, it's kind of not going my way. I am taking a lot of damage. So this is something that you have to be careful of. The barb chains just get you, and then you'll be kind of stunned, and they will do a lot of damage to you with the hammer. So I actually did manage to get a kill there and just get out. And this choke point is really important for this build because a lot of the games where I was playing as defense, I was actually able to just keep the team here, especially if they were within the same resonance bracket as me. They just weren't able to pass through this point here because I was able to hit them with the disintegrate and keep spamming my arcane wind, and they just get frozen and wouldn't be able to do anything. And I'm going to show an example of that in the next game. But for now, I think this team did actually manage to get through. I'm just trying to get the angle on the barb here with my disintegrate. So this is something that's really important with this build, is you always want to be at an angle where once you shoot your disintegrate, it's going to hit an enemy and then bounce between you and the enemy, or between the enemy and other opponents behind them. So I took a bit too much damage there and just wanted to heal. And you always want to keep an eye on your teammates and also the other players on the team, because positioning with this build is just so important. And if you kind of overextend, you're going to die really quickly. And you'll be able to see this here, where the barb just chained me and I instantly died from like 100 health to 0. So that just goes to show the power of kind of barb and how powerful it is in the current meta. But I believe that this build does actually counter barb pretty well, especially if they're within the same resonance bracket as you. So if we just talk about how this build does against other classes, I believe that against Barb and Crusader, it's actually pretty simple. You just want to keep your distance, keep moving back while casting your Disintegrate and Arcane Wind. If they try to move closer, just keep trying to move back and kind of stunning them all the time. They will be a bit slow because they will keep feeling the effect of your stun. It's solely where the Barb is very high resonance and they're playing with the Heartless Terror helmet, which kind of gives them the CC immune, where it's going to be a bit difficult. But with regular Barbs, which are in the same resonance bracket, they're really no problem. For the Blood Knights and the Monks, they can be kind of a problem, but now with the Backlash mechanic, the Blood Knight isn't as strong as it used to be. It's still very strong, don't get me wrong, but you shouldn't have too much of a problem with them. The only problem is the Monk class. Monks can be really annoying, especially if they play very well. They will be able to get out your freeze, which is really annoying. And Tempest could also be a problem because they can kind of break away from the CC, but it did get nerfed slightly, so I'd say they're still decent to deal with. It's only really Monks that really die for you, which can be a problem. Obviously, Necromancer has the Wraith form, which can also get out of your freeze, but as long as you kind of bear in mind the timing of it, when they're going to Wraith and when they're going to be out of Wraith, you just freeze them, you should be fine. So now this game looks like I'm doing pretty well. I'm at 8 kill streak. I'm just trying to freeze my opponents, and yeah, you can just see that there's a Barb with me right now, so I feel pretty confident I can just stay behind him and he can kind of soak up the damage, and then when I do get a freeze, they can just go in and hit them. So this is really important because basically you can only exist if you have a front line, and if you're just going in solo, it's going to be really hard for you most of the time, unless you're playing with players who are within the same resonance bracket as you. So you want to always make sure that you have front line ahead of you, and you don't just want to let them go in, you do want to support them, because if they die, then you're going to be left with no front line. It's kind of a yin-yang situation, where if you can kind of keep the front line alive for as long as possible, then you also get to survive. So it's really important not just to blame the front line and ask always for the front line. You want to be going in with them, seeing that how they play, and just going in and time your attacks. So as you can see here, I'm working very well with this Barb here, and I'm just trying to heal up, and I'm going to re-engage again. I really don't want him to die, because if he dies, then I'm going to have a really rough time. So here I got a bit too cocky for my own good. As you can see, I tried to face off that Barb by myself, and it almost cost me. I almost got one shot there. But now I'm just getting back in the back line where my position is supposed to be, just trying to see if there's an opportunity for me to attack. So a lot of the time you'll see me just cast Arcane Wind, and this is just to deter them and kind of stall for time a bit while I reposition myself and also give the team a bit more time. But as you can see here, the Barb's currently ahead of me. He's just healing up. I have to be a bit careful here because the Crusader is rushing for me now. I can still see that the Barb's alive, so I kind of feel I'm going to be okay. So the thing about playstyle with this build is that once you get the first freeze in, it's kind of GG for the opponent, because you can just keep basically chain stunning them and chain freezing them. And this basically means that in a lot of one-on-one situations, unless they have a CC break, they're going to be dead most of the time. You can see the wizard there, for example. He just got hit by my first freeze and pretty much was stuck completely. So I have to be a bit careful here because now I don't really have a front line, so I'm just going to make my way back. And that barb just died from my dots and from my grace set. So here we go. I'm just going to re-engage. And now it looks like I'm gonna die because they just pulled me in. Oh, okay, looks like I managed to escape. Okay, that was pretty lucky. So I'm pretty confident about this game now because we just have a few seconds left and also just a few kills left. So yeah, I'm just gonna make my way to the other side, see if I can get some kills there. It seems like this side is a bit more ahead, so 90 kill streak now. I'm gonna try to get 20 hopefully before the game ends, but let's see if I can make it happen. Not too sure. Okay, 18 seconds left on the timer. There's my barb friend just chilling there. Okay, 12 seconds left. Here we go. So there's the Tempest, and he managed to CC break, but I'm about to kill him. So there we go, 20 kill streak. And I'm pretty happy with how this game's gone. I think I played generally pretty okay. The start of the game was a bit rough, but once I got behind the front line, I managed to kind of freeze them and stop them from doing anything. So that's the final score there. 21 kills, 2 deaths. Okay. So for the second game here, I'm just going to show a short clip of it. And this is an example where we were able to keep the attacker team stuck in this choke point for pretty much the whole game and just managed to win from that. So you'll be able to see just how strong the spam of Arcane Wind is. And you'll just see now as the team makes their way through, I'm just able to get my first disintegrate on them, and it's just gonna be able to go crazy. Just look at the skills here. You can see that I'm able to spam Arcane Wind like crazy. And they're already kind of being a bit cautious here, but I'm just trying to peek my way through, but not get too close so I don't get hit by the chains. So as you can see here, this monk is also doing a really good job just buffing me here with the fire aura. Shout out to this player, Tetsuo, he's playing very well. I think this player was 1.3k resonance, so this lobby was obviously equal resonance to me. Most players were between 1.5k to about 3k resonance, so I was pretty confident that I could kind of keep them in the choke here, and that's why I was kind of being a bit more aggressive. So as you can see here, they really cannot move, and look at all the numbers there, it's just crazy. So with the meta being kind of really barb heavy, this build just works really great. You only have to be careful of the Necros and Blood Knights that you do match, and also the monks. So I'm actually going to move ahead now and show you guys an attacker game, and most of the players here were between 2k and 4k resonance, so that's just to give you an idea of the kind of game I was playing. And once again, this is another barb heavy game, and you'll just be able to see how I'm able to counter these barbs here. So we've only been pushing one side here, so this kind of gives the disadvantage to us that all the players are going to be focusing at us. And as you can see here, I've got players from the back and also players from the front, so I'm just trying to be a bit careful and keep my eyes on the back as well as the front. So here we go, you can just see how crazy this build is. I did take a lot of damage there, so you have to be really careful and always ready to move out as soon as you get chained in. So I'm just healing up here, and it does look like they have decided to also try to push the other side. So we've got teammates on the other side now, but I have to be really careful because I don't really have so much front line. So I'm actually going to get out and heal again. I'm pretty lucky that that Necro didn't chase me. I can see that he procced his cheat death, so he's playing a bit more careful. So here we go. And I'm actually playing really aggressive here because I kind of got myself into a bad situation, but luckily didn't get killed. So the Crusader gave me the immune, very nice. And I can just continue. So you always have to check the Necro Borrowed Time and also the Wraith form. Those are the two most powerful skills, because if they do fear you from the Wraith, then you're going to be stuck in the CC, and then they're going to finish you off with their AoE bone effects, and it's not going to be a fun time for you. So just always be mindful of the Wraith form timing and kind of have the countdown in your head of when you're able to attack them. So here, this is what I mean. The Necro just took advantage that I was too close to him and proc my cheat death there. But so far, it's kind of smooth sailing. 13 kill streak. Okay, and there I got chained into the Demon Hunter, so insta-died. But that's okay. So we're really close to pushing on the right side here, and I think that the left side is also getting ahead. So I'm just going to do my movement rotation so I can get back into combat really quick. So here we go. Necro there's down. So I can just keep continuing on the right side here. And one of my other teammates is playing really well. He's also Tempest, so shout out to him. So these Necros can be a real pain, especially the higher resonance Necros. They can make your life hell if they just keep diving for you, so just really be careful of that. So I've got this Tempest with me now, so I'm kind of taking a range. My life is a bit low. Looks like they are managing to push it on the left side there, so kind of happy about that, and I think that this game just ends here. Yep, they got overwhelmed. So it doesn't really matter if I end up dying here, I'm just having a bit of fun. So I did end up dying. So I've had a few people kind of see this build that I'm playing, and they have no idea how the hell I'm playing it. So this is the reason why I wanted to make this video, and hopefully it kind of puts Wizard into perspective, like kind of a new light for some people, because this is pretty much a different way to play the class, in my opinion. And it might even break the meta depending on how far people take it. So there we go, 17 kills and 3 deaths. So for the next two games, I'm going to show how this build performs in the higher resonance bracket. So bear in mind that once again, I'm playing with around 2.3k resonance, and in this lobby, we've got players above 8k resonance. I think the highest resonance is on the other team. His name is Crypto. It's a barb with, I think, almost 11k resonance. And you can see that the player on my team, who's also high resonance player, is telling us to basically try to chain CC him. So we'll see how well we can do that. And you can see that here, I'm just staying in this choke point again, and I'm just trying my best to get an angle at somebody so I can hit them with a disintegrate and reset my arcane wind. So here we go, just trying my best here. And you can see that I'm pretty confident because I do have a lot of my teammates behind me. I just have to be really careful because that monk's spinning away and I got hit with the chains. So it's kind of my bad. I shouldn't be at the front here, to be honest. I should just be slightly more to the back. So it's kind of looking fine for now. I can see most of my teammates are still in this area, so I'm not going to back away. And this is something that I see kind of people do as lower resonances, that they back away too much. But at the end of the day, even if you die, you've kind of wasted the time of a higher resonance player. So you don't always want to be backing away and kind of running away from the fight. You kind of want to try be as impactful as possible. So I can see that the barb is there now, and I'm just trying to spam my arcane wind on the spawn just to spawn kill them, and hopefully the whale on our team kind of takes them out, which looks like what's happening here. So here we go, I actually managed to get the kill on him. That's pretty nice, and I'm just going to keep continuing my chain CC. They're not able to do anything, and the really great thing here is I know where they're going to spawn, so I know where to aim my disintegrate, and it shouldn't be possible for me to get all of these kills, but it is, even at this low resonance, which is just insane. And I'll show the resonance of these players at the end so you guys can see, but I've kind of got myself in a bad position here, and I was kind of flexing a bit here. So I'm just going to try to reposition, but it's looking pretty bad for me, I'm not going to lie, because my team's all on the other side now, so there's not really much for me to do but just die, basically, or wait for them to go to the other side. But it looks like they want to finish me off here because they've had enough of my kill streak. So I think I am going to die here. Okay, I'll get 2 more kills here. You can see how powerful this build is. So I ended up dying shortly after this, but we had 39 out of 65 kills and they'd barely moved the idols, so needless to say we won, and I didn't want to bore you guys, but you can just see, I'm just going to show the stats at the end here, and you can kind of see the resonance of players. So the Blood Knight on my team was 9.2k, the Barb on the other team was almost 11k, 10.7. So I'm going to show the last game now, and I was lucky enough to play a lot of games with another content creator. In this particular game, he was playing on the other side, and it was Killswitch. Shout out to Killswitch. I'm going to leave a link to his channel in the video description. If you haven't checked his channel out, then please do check him out and give him a subscribe. But for the last game here, I'm going to be on attack. This is a high resonance lobby, so you're going to be seeing my health drop a lot, and I'm probably going to end up dying quite a lot of times. So let's just see how it goes. I'm always kind of open-minded when I get into these games. A lot of players kind of like to give up even before the game has started once they see the names, but I just like to give it a go at least. So here we go. I'm trying to get the hit on them with my disintegrate so I can start spamming. And there we go, just gonna spam a bit with my arcane wind. Okay, gotta be a bit careful because I feel like I'm getting a bit too close here, but so far it's okay. We've got the monk going in. You can see that even though I'm not doing that much damage, I am still able to kind of freeze them a lot, and it is annoying them. So you will be seeing a lot of them kind of start diving for me because they just get frustrated with the amount of CC that I'm doing. And this is really good in my case because even if they do dive for me, then I've wasted their time. Like a high resonance player going after a 2k resonance or a 3k resonance player, that's kind of a good use because basically it takes the pressure away from the team. So I'm trying to stun the Barb here. I keep saying stun, sorry, I mean freeze. Whenever I say stun, I do mean freeze. Apologies, guys. So here we go. Okay, and now I'm low on health. I'm just going to heal up. So far, it's not really looking good for us. We haven't managed to push the idol too much, but hopefully that's going to change. So I've got a bit more room to breathe on this side. I'm just going to stay behind this Crusader here and hope for the best. We've got a Blood Knight here. Yep, Killswitch trying to die for me. He knows my strategy very well because we played a lot of games together. So I'm just going to be careful here. And there's another Blood Knight there. So the nerf did kind of impact them a little bit, the backlash nerf. So I do feel like after a while where they're spamming their skills, my freeze effect does kind of hit them a bit more. I mean, it isn't so obvious in this game because these guys are all pretty high resonance and they have a lot of resistance in their secondary, so it's not so obvious, but at least for Blood Knights in my resonance bracket, it is a bit more obvious that I'm able to freeze them for a bit longer. I was a bit lucky there, I got the kill on Killswitch, and I'm pretty happy that my team is actually giving me the front line here and giving me enough room that I can actually make an impact. So you can see here, even though I'm not getting many kills, I'm still able to kind of CC and chain CC everyone so that other players can get a chance to get the kills, or at least stop them from pushing us back. So here I'm healing up and the mob that deep hits me, which is pretty unfortunate. Once again I get the buff from the monk. And there I got procced with my cheat death. I'm just going to try to re-engage here. Looks like we're pushing this left side a bit more than the right side, but there's no one on the right side, so that's pretty good. I'm just going to try my best to support my team here, and Killswitch is coming for me. I can feel it. My spidey sense. Oh my god. Okay, and insta-dead. I guess he got revenge for earlier. That's fine. So I'm just going to try to respawn and get back in as soon as possible. There's a lot of red dots on the left there. Have to be a bit careful there. I'm kind of scared. I'm going to wait for my teammates. So it's really important that you don't just go in like a headless chicken and die insta again. So just kind of give your teammates time to respawn and reposition. But it is really tempting sometimes that you see the timer and you're like, gosh, I really got to get back in there. But a lot of the time it's actually the correct play to just wait like 5 seconds or so just for your teammates to get back in. So here I'm just trying to be a bit careful because this Demon Hunter wants to go for me, and now I've got another Blood Knight chasing me. Okay, thank God. Okay, I ended up dying here. I think this Demon Hunter is rank 1 on my server, so he's also a good player. Obviously this this game now is very tough in this bracket. Once you get above like 3.5k points on the legend bracket, all the games seem really close and really difficult. So I've repositioned to the right side here. Let's see how far we can go. And on the timer it's 1.5 minutes. Okay, the left side is really close. I just have to be really careful here. All the Blood Knights are diving for me. It's just insane. Like, they'll chase me all the way back to the base if they have to. So I thought I thought I wouldn't have made such a high impact in this game, but once I looked at the stats I was kind of surprised. So you guys will be able to see that I was able to do quite a bit in this game, even though my resonance isn't that high. Oh, and there I misclicked the UI. So normally I do enable the alt click in the settings, the alt click to interact with the UI, and that stops you from misclicking. So luckily here they did manage to push on the left side and we broke through. And I was kind of surprised because the second half of this game it felt like I was just dead all of the time. So I'm gonna let the game play out here just so you guys can see the stats, because I know a lot of people like seeing the stats, but that's about all that I wanted to share for this video, guys. So I'd really recommend you guys to try this build out. It is a bit difficult to play, but once you've kind of got through the learning curve, then you will kind of see how powerful this build is. And as always, if you have any questions or comments or suggestions, then do leave them in the comments down below. I do have about 5 hours more of recorded gameplay for this build, so if you do like watching my gameplay, let me know and I might consider uploading it. But for now, I'm going to be signing off. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll catch you all in the next video. Peace.